Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Board Gaming Doctor. My name is Phil, and I'll be your Board Game Doctor today. In this video, I'm going to give you my first impressions of Casus Belli. This is a Martin Wallace design that is coming out into 2026 next year, and this is currently on GameFound as of today. I think there is about 1 or 2 days left. However, there will be a very extended late pledge for this, I'm pretty sure. So in case you come across this video after the campaign, you'll probably still have a chance to check this out for yourself. So this game first of all, I'm on Tabletop Simulator. In the description, I will include a link that I got from Board Game Geek to find this, to have yourself, have a demo version of this game. I believe there is only a set amount of event cards that you can play with, and it's got all the factions, and it only plays at 4 players since it uses the 4-player map here. But in any case, I couldn't find it regularly on Tabletop Simulator, so I had to use the Board Game Geek link to do so. Anyway, so this is a prototype version of the game, and what I did is I played this four-handed. I went around the table and played everything. So I don't have any gameplay videos of for you to watch. I do have where I am in the middle of this game. I feel ready to talk about how I feel about this game and to go from there. So in any case, I'm going to go over some of the mechanisms and what feels unique to me, some game comparisons, and then my first impressions at the end with a rating. So this game, first of all, is a re-implementation of A Handful of Stars. It is a game that was in a trilogy of games quite a few years ago, that all started with A Few Acres of Snow. I have not played any of these games, and in the game comparisons, I will compare this to other games that I have played, but essentially what this is a deck building game that is kind of a Euro Space 4X type of experience. The game A Handful of Stars was, I'm pretty sure, a deck building game, but Martin Wallace said that that game was the starting point for the development of this game, and I can say that there are many additions to make this game heavier, more complex, and different compared to that. So take that as you will. Anyway, like I mentioned, this is a game that utilizes deck building in a 4X space themed type of experience. And the first thing that I want to talk about is the deck building. So in this game, you take a hand of 6 cards from your starting deck of 12, and you play out these cards like you would a deck building game. However, one major difference is that you take one action on your turn. It's not like a normal deck building game where you take multiple actions on the same turn. But what you do is you look at your hand of cards, and the cards themselves are unique in that each card represents the number of different resources that you have available for you to use on your turn. So you can combine, for example, 2 of these cards to produce 2 science, these 2 cards to produce 2 population, etc. And based off of the actions that you have available, with this player aid, here are the list of actions you can take. I won't go through all of those, but you essentially explore the map, you move, you can build colonies or outposts, you can even attack other people as well, depending on the state of war, which we'll get to later. You can buy cards. You can also do something very interesting in this game, which is to save cards in this RAM section, or random access memory, for the next round, or which are called episodes in this game. So you can save up to 2 cards from your hand in case you want to save them to combo with some upcoming cards that you have, or to just save them for later as well. A really cool option mechanically to be able to save potential future actions and combinations for later. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it as well. And in addition to that, you have a separate played section for all the cards that you play down on your turn and over the turns of your episode. And as you buy cards, you will add them to a discard pile and then shuffle those later. I'm pretty sure I think there are some rules that I might have missed about shuffling, but in any case, kind of standard stuff. I think there are a couple of other things too that you can do One, you can play cards for ongoing abilities, which not only gives you these abilities, but also thins the deck. And you can also thin the deck by taking or spending uh, a politics resource. And so you can trash cards from your hand or your RAM. And so it makes it pretty easy to, if you want to, thin your deck and really streamline your experience with the cards that you have. For note, there are, I think, about 50 or so cards that you can draw from in the common pool of cards to play from or to buy from. And they all have unique abilities that can help you in various ways in the game. But you also have your own deck of, I believe, 10 or 12 cards that you can purchase from as well. Some of them are a little bit more expensive than the general cards that you can buy from the market, but a lot of these cards have very specific things that benefit your faction in particular. And that's the second thing that is unique about this game, is that you have 4 different factions in the box, each one approaching this game a little differently in how you win. And this is all tied into how this game is scored at the end, because this is a Euro game through and through, even though there are a lot of 4X mechanisms and themes in this game. For example, the Corellan Empire is really focused on combat, and this is displayed by the fact that you get a lot of points if you essentially replace civilized colonies with your own through attacking, right? Versus, and this is a good example right over here, is the Stellar Alliance, where they do not get any points at the end of the game for combating neutral colonies and replacing them with their own, but they really benefit from making alliances with them. And so every faction has a different way to really benefit in this game, but every faction could potentially score in all of the various ways that you can play this game with. You can attack, you can form trade ships, you can link these up to gain presence and extra resources. You can lay down culture tokens in between these systems and kind of play a semi-area majority type of game to get a few points there as well. You can buy certain cards that give you points, etc. There are a lot of ways that this game can reward you for points and a lot of various avenues in which to do so. Then, of course, there is combat, as I've mentioned before, but it is predicated whether you can attack someone else or not, based off of this war track. And so in this game, through various events and cards and combats with neutral allies and colonies, you increase the tension of war amongst the factions that are playing. And if it gets to a certain level, you will have to roll a die, and if it lands on this number or below, then war begins. When that happens, you add 2 rounds to this game, which usually lasts 7 rounds, and you can openly attack other people. But anytime you purchase a card, a technology card, it goes on top of your deck instead of into your discard pile. So this game allows for the opportunity to either play this game as peacefully as possible, because you can spend these politic resources to decrease the tension and the likelihood of war. You can also affect like corruption. These are negative points at the end of the game, and it's kind of another way to make sure you don't get a lot of negative points in this game. And yeah, so you're always thinking about these different tracks and where they are. You're obviously thinking about different factions as well, and reacting to events that happen at the beginning of every round. And these events are very varied in what they do. For example, this event here, the Relentless, adds a token to the board which has a combat value, and if it lands on a space with someone else, they may lose some presence in those planets or systems, right? And they can kind of spread and continue their relentless raid on the stars and the systems here until someone does something about it. And unfortunately, that happened here with this the blue player here. They had this relentless token placed there, which was interesting. So everyone is reacting to these event cards throughout the game, and as well as what everyone else is doing. And so, yeah, that's essentially the overview of this game. Now, to talk about some game comparisons, once again, I have not played a handful of stars or a few acres of snow. I do believe those games are deck builders in nature, and so the core mechanism of how you take your actions is probably similar in all of those games. But the first game that came to mind as I was playing this was, how does this compare to Arcs? Now, Arcs was a major hit from last year that a lot of people, including myself, really enjoyed. I feel like Arcs does approach the space 4X setting in a unique way. Aside from deck building, it has more of a trick taking inspiration in how you take your actions. Some people have compared these two games already and said that Arcs is a more reactive and tactical game versus Casus Belli, which is more deterministic and strategic. And I can see an argument for that. I feel like you're always reacting to things in this game too, including the events as well as what other players do, reacting to the hand of cards that you get and the resources and the combinations of resources available. So there is some tactical play in this game as well. And I should say that I feel like, despite the events in this game, Arcs is very much a storytelling narrative experience as well, especially if you play with the expansion, which I have not, but from what I've heard, it is quite an interesting experience that really hones in on the storytelling experience for each game. So both games are mechanically different. They are I guess different in the approach, where this is more mechanical, driving stories from what the mechanisms give you, as well as some flavor in terms of the events, whereas Arcs really leans heavily into that and is mechanically more a reactive type of game. Other games that this reminded me of, games from Martin Wallace include like Brass Birmingham and Brass Lancashire. Tinner's Trail are other games that I've played as well. There are, I think, similarities in all of those games. This is mechanically different than all of those other games as well, but I get the same sense of, you have sort of a map puzzle that you're trying to solve, where everyone kind of starts out, and they're literally starts out in a corner on the map and slowly creeps their way into nudging each other with their shoulders, essentially, as you expand into the board. And that kind of happens in Brass as well, where you can kind of play off of what other people are doing. In this game, people will explore, and you can then hop in and try to build an outpost or make an alliance from someone having explored that system already, versus in Brass, where you can create a line that intersects with someone else's line and build your own structures in places where they already have presence, etc. And people can benefit from each other in kind of a positive way. In this game, there's not a lot of positive interaction. I would say it's more neutral to direct combat, right? So kind of a negative interaction in a way that is appropriate for the theme itself. But in any case, there are probably a few other comparisons that I can make. I'll make them if I think of them. But I don't have much experience with other Space 4X games. Most recently, it has just been Arcs, and so it's really interesting. I guess the different takes on the genre has with two powerhouse designers in Cole Worley and Martin Wallace, and each game feels unique enough to play and experience, have a different experience as you play them, is what I took away from both of my experiences playing this game as well as Arcs. But let's hop into my first impression ratings of this game. So after calculating my final rating for this game out of 10, I actually gave it an 8.8 out of 10, which seems surprisingly high for myself, but maybe I should be expecting that, right? This game was a lot of fun. I was really looking forward to this game and giving it a go once I heard about it, and wanted to know, because I wasn't aware of Martin Wallace's take on a Space 4X game, because I had never played A Handful of Stars. So just knowing and having played this game, I found that it really ticks off a lot of the boxes that I look for in games myself and that I have really enjoyed from Wallace's games in the past. I should mention that I've played other games like Steam as well, and so a lot of his games do have the DNA or the approach where there's a lot of shared interaction on a shared board. You think of Brass Birmingham, and you do get that in spades. So I like this game because it does start off as like, here I am in my corner, I'm slowly exploring, and soon after just a couple of rounds, you're all of a sudden really close to your neighbors, especially in a four-player game, and you have the opportunity to flex your fleets and really focus in on trying to either play peacefully or to show some aggression or prevent your opponents from showing that aggression as well. It all goes back to the name, which is Casus Belli, which is a reason or a cause for war. And I really like the theme of this game, how it comes together with how appropriate it is representing and abstracting what probably would happen in real life, where you just can't go and attack someone else, or at least that's not how it usually works. There's a lot of posturing, a lot of politics, and a lot of happenstance that ultimately leads to war. And so, sure, you can be aggressive and take out colonies early on, but I feel like this war track is brilliant, and I think this really can represent what may happen in real life when it comes to starting or threatening war from starting. And I really like the fact that if you are trying to play peacefully, one option is to decrease the opportunity and the threat for war to happen. So I really like how dynamic that can be and how that could create a different experience every time. On a wholly different note, it reminds me of Lowlands, where it is a semi-cooperative game where you can, you're building up your own personal farm, but you are collectively contributing to the dike and hoping to either prevent it from spilling, having the ocean spill over into your farms, which will score the game in a completely different way as opposed to letting that happen. And in this game, certain factions like the Corellan Empire would obviously benefit from having a war happen and having more of an aggressive event. A lot of these factions can have the combat prowess to combat the Corellan Empire as well. And so I really like the strategic avenues of this game to not only come down to combat. You may be motivated to do so, but you can also approach this game through trade, through culture, through making alliances, etc. Right? So there are different ways to really focus on this game, and I would personally feel very interested in trying to pursue this game from different strategic avenues and viewpoints, even with the same faction, right? One note on replayability is, yes, there are only 4 factions, so it doesn't, that these asymmetric viewpoints on how to play the game can be comparable to Root, which is a game that really focuses in on the asymmetry to the point where the factions pretty much play the game differently one from another, whereas in this game everyone plays or can play the same way, right? But you just have point benefits that are differing from each other. And so aside from the faction that you play, which I feel like can offer a similar replayability to Root in order to really understand what the faction wants to do, what kind of text they come with, predetermined as well to buy from. In addition to that, you have different cards that come out and different events and a different setup for these different planets, which essentially offer you cards that you can add to your deck that give you certain amalgamations of resources to use from. And if you make alliances too, just off the cuff, you have a certain ability from that planet to do so. So all of these planets are arranged randomly from the setup, which can create replayability and variability in this game. And so to me, this hits the right amount of variability where you can have a general strategy from a certain faction that you're playing, but every game is going to feel different just because of how the exploration and the choices that are offered to you, in addition from the turn-to-turn choices based off of what resources you get at the beginning of your hand, create for a different puzzle that you're solving each turn to try to achieve a similar goal each time, or to explore different ways to achieve that goal as well. These events are very random, and it's really fun to roll these dice and see where these events might occur, but they could potentially ruin your game if you're like this blue player surrounded by a space kraken and the relentless all within a bunch of your systems. And so that may or may not be your cup of tea in a 2 hour or so, maybe plus long game, right? But aside from that, like I love the theming of all of these cards, the factions, the war, of course, corruption, trying to keep down as much corruption as possible to not have as many negative turns or points at the end of the game. All the different ways from a peaceful trading and development versus, a more aggressive approach to the game. I think it really hits home thematically for me, all encompassed in a Euro style mechanism that I feel like really brings everything together and does so pretty well. So this, it reminded me of Brass and reminded me of why I do enjoy Martin Wallace's designs. And I really like his approach mechanically to deck building in this game, and how strategic it can be. Right, a lot of deck builders are like, well, these are the 5 cards that I have. I'm going to play them all and just kind of go with the flow. And you have some agency in how you thin your deck or modify your deck to allow yourself to repetitively create combos to pursue from and pursue your points at the end of the game. But in this game, I feel like you have a lot more agency in the resources and in the way, or I guess the order in which you take those resources and utilize them. There are so many different actions in this game that you can take. Thank goodness for this card, but it kind of reminded me of like Roads and Boats, where you have so many different things that you can do or build in that game, and in this game you do have that as well. And so I love the feeling of like, okay, here are my 6 cards. Let me look and see what I could feasibly do. Maybe I can build a couple of merchant ships this turn. Maybe I could grab an alien tech, or really prevent the tension from building and use my politics resources for those as well. And so it's really fun to kind of puzzle that out and then compare your puzzle in your hand to what is going on the board, try to predict what other people are trying to do, and react accordingly. So that was a lot of fun as well. I think that's it. As far as the rules go, it wasn't terribly difficult. I did watch a video or two, but the rulebook was pretty straightforward. I think if you have played Wallace Designs before, it should come together naturally. And I think a lot of that thematic element and integration in this game came through to make it a somewhat easier learn. And, to the point where I could play 4-handed. I wasn't making the most optimal decisions, I believe, but I still was able to feasibly, and quickly take turns, because you're playing one action at a time, whether it's a combination of cards or something else, right? And so turns can be pretty snappy in this game, which is pretty nice. And it kind of reminded me of Terraforming Mars in the sense that, you have a bunch of different actions that you can take, and it comes down to turn priority, or I should say, action priority, where the part of the puzzle is figuring out what you need to do first out of all the actions that you want to do on during an episode, which is very much like what Agricola is like. Really noticing what other players are doing and prioritizing certain actions first is really cool to do and makes you feel clever. And I think having this RAM and being able to save cards for future turns really allows you to gain an advantage on your next episode to really lead up to something that you might be building for. And that is reminiscent of Terra Mystica as well. I feel like that's a big part of knowing when to pass and knowing which actions to save for the future to be able to really benefit from whatever happens next. So really enjoyed that. Lots to play and discover here in a more Euro style 4X. But I really enjoyed this and look forward to playing this again and really diving into the intricacies that this game has to offer, which I'm hopeful that it's very much like Brass, and hopefully it gets the same accord as that game does. But anyway, that's Casus Belli by Martin Wallace. Thank you for watching this video all the way to the end, and let me know if you plan on playing this or backing this, and why wouldn't you do that. And so just let me know in the comments down below. But thank you for watching. Hope you schedule an appointment with me real soon, and I'll catch you on the next one. Take care.